the meeting to order. And our first item of business is our recitation of the vision statement. And our vision statement is every school will be a thriving school that prepares every student to graduate from high school, college, career, and community ready. Okay. Second item is our approval of the minutes. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the minutes from the regular board meeting dated January 29th, 2018.
Second. Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Oh,
Aye.
excuse me.
Oh.
I do this every time. Imad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, next on our agenda is public appearances, and we're going to have those in two segments. Our regular public appearances will come after our budget public appearances. But we want to thank all who have come to speak tonight. Our speakers are welcome to speak on any topic at the regular board meeting, but we would like speakers in the audience to know that board action and conversation is limited to the items on our agenda, which means members will not be able to engage in conversations with the speakers. We will take your comments into account in our decision-making and follow up with you where appropriate. I want to again thank you for participating in our meeting tonight. So with that, our first speakers are the ones on the budget, and our first speaker is Chris Carusi, followed by Neil Rainford. Chris is well seasoned in public appearances, so I think she knows. Chris, we have 3 minutes.
Hi. Is this on? Okay, good. I'm here to talk about the budget. First, I want to thank y'all for the cost of living adjustment for our staff and for the wage compression, addressing that for our ESEA unit. You guys are awesome. This is really important for addressing staff morale concerns and retaining our experienced staff. I urge you to find $32,000, which is a drop in the bucket, to address the pay discrepancy for our AFSCME workers, for our long-term food service workers and our custodial workers. This isn't much money. It's the right thing to do. Please do it. I want to talk a little bit about the school security line item in the budget. It's great that we're getting $1 million from the state to address this issue. I'm concerned about the $5 million that we're spending out of the general fund. That is a ton of money. Given all the conversations about budget austerity in the next couple of years, can we really afford to spend $5 million on the Cadillac plan for security when we could save $2 or $3 million and just get keys for our interior locks? I also am not sure if staff have been consulted about their options, and I don't think we should be making this decision without first talking to and listening to staff and finding out what they need, because they're the ones who are going to be making decisions in the extremely unlikely event that we have a school shooter in Madison. As far as the Achievement Network goes, I hope you pull this item out of the consent agenda, and I hope you vote no on the contract. Hopefully you've all read the evaluation that came out of Harvard that showed that Achievement Network pretty much had no impact on improving student learning outcomes. We can't afford to spend $50,000 on a consultant with this kind of track record. Finally, I wanted to just touch base on the ad hoc committee on school discipline. I encourage you to postpone this vote. It seems like it's incredibly rushed. I was at the Guiding Coalition meeting on Monday, and nothing was mentioned about this to our group. I do not know how this ad hoc committee is going to interface with the Guiding Coalition or with the MTI Joint Committee on Security. It seems like there's no board representation from special education on this committee, which is a problem. I'm actually concerned that Nikki Vandermeulen was not assigned to this committee. She's an attorney, she's a disability advocate, and she works with the kids we're trying to keep out of the school to prison pipeline. It seems like she should be on this committee. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to a lively debate tonight. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Neil Rainford, followed by Del Underbaki.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you tonight and for your service. My name is Neil Rainford. I'm a representative for AFSCME and for the school district employees in the food service and custodial maintenance group. And
the mic isn't working. We're having a hard time hearing.
Talk a little closer to it.
a little closer? Oh, much better.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So again, thanks for your service tonight and for the opportunity to speak to you. My name is Neil Rainford. I'm the AFSCME representative for the food service and the custodial maintenance employees. And I'm here tonight to ask for your support for a small budget amendment to bring a dozen or so employees into parity with all of their coworkers and administrators who have moved from one work group to another. These are dedicated district employees who have started working for one work group, sometimes security, sometimes food service, and then moved to another work group, often the custodial group or another group like that. And they have had a portion of their vacation and related longevity-based benefits stripped away as part of a policy that our association only learned of recently, and we have asked that it be corrected. As was mentioned, it's a small cost to do this, about $32,000 or so odd dollars, and it corrects this inequity only prospectively for these employees. So what they lost in years past is not addressed. It's about a dozen or so employees, and it really corrects what is now two classes of employees. So I ask please for your support for this, and thanks again for your service. Good night.
Okay. Thank you. Del Underbaki, followed by Jennifer Greenwald.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to speak in support of funding for the Office of Student Engagement. Ever since the board's adoption of the plan for students at risk for not graduating from high school in October of 2016, I've been keeping busy with a Get the Word Out campaign. My mission is to spread the word about our at-risk plan and PI 25 into neighborhoods of those who need to know. Despite media coverage of Opportunity Youth initiatives, I have only met one person who had heard of our at-risk plan. I have not talked with anyone who has received a notification letter. No one has shared they have received a phone or a personal contact as offered in our current at-risk plan. I am not saying letters were not mailed. I am not saying phone calls or personal contacts were not made. What I'm hearing is that eligible students and families continue to fall through the cracks. We need an Office of Youth Engagement to ensure that all identified at-risk students are contacted and provided interventions and customized supports to facilitate re-engagement. Project U-Turn, Philadelphia's at-risk outreach program, has contributed towards the framework of our current Opportunity Youth and Office of Youth Engagement initiatives. Project U-Turn is coming up on its 10th anniversary and is currently analyzing what has been learned and what needs to change moving forward. I want to highlight two findings that I think are critical to our at-risk plan development. The first, commit to early intervention. Project U-Turn strongly supports the provision of unique, customized intervention services to identified at-risk learners as soon as possible. They have experienced the consequences of wasting valuable time and resources by delaying targeted interventions until the 9th grade. Our current at-risk plan clearly states our compliance with PI 25 and our commitment to identifying and providing interventions starting at 5th grade. Yet, our Opportunity Youth pilot only documents cohort ages of 10th grade and older. How is our at-risk plan providing relief for 5th grade and middle school learners? We need an Office of Youth Engagement to make sure every identified 5th grade and older at-risk student is provided customized and sustained intervention that reflects results-driven accountability standards. This office needs to ensure we avoid finding ourselves in the position of providing too little, too late for our most marginalized learners. The second, Project U-Turn staff acknowledges the corrosive effect of granting credits towards graduation that don't reflect skills and knowledge required to move forward. A Google search will highlight labels of diploma mills or diploma gate. Students know when they are wasting their time. Feeling manipulated is not feeling respected. Based on my investigations, I encourage the district to carefully review our credit earning policies that involve differentiated curriculum, work experience, and credit recovery. Is there evidence that shows our interpretation of these options have created a disproportionate lowered bar of a graduation achievement for at-risk students of color and students with disabilities?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen Greenwald, followed by Sue Rogatsky.
Hi. I'm here to talk about three things. One is COLA, and I also want to thank you for that. And I want to urge you to start planning for the next one now, so there are no surprises. Similarly, I think you should find the money to pay AFSCME workers what's fair. Thirdly, I want to talk about the ad hoc committee on discipline. I don't really know what that committee is about, but the problem never was the BEP. Restorative practices are a complete shift. They're a societal shift. As a society, we are not restorative, we are punitive. So for us to be restorative, for schools to do the life-changing anti-racist work of restorative practices, that requires real professional development delivered by experienced practitioners. It needs to be sustained, and furthermore, we need staffing. We need people to cover classrooms so that I can step out and work with a child one-on-one if I need to. We need the freedom in our classrooms to have a circle if we need to. There's a lot that we need, but the problem isn't the policy. I think any committee that is going to look at the policy needs to, A, understand what I just said, because that's the reality, and B, the committee should have representation from all stakeholders, which includes administrative staff, it includes board members, it certainly includes teachers, it should include parents, and it could potentially include students, and I would suggest that it includes students who experience the most discipline. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sue Rogatsky. I'm a high school teacher at Memorial.
Closer, please.
Can you hear me now?
Closer.
Closer? Is that okay?
3 inches is
Yeah, as loud as
Okay.
you can get.
Is that okay? I'm a special education teacher at Memorial High School. I've been teaching special education and regular education for 27 years, 20 years in Madison. I'm here tonight because I'm concerned about staffing cuts that are proposed for next year in special education. Last year, there were conversations about increasing special education pay and possibly bonuses for new teachers. I filled out a survey about this, and I actually wrote that I didn't think that was a good idea, even though I would be on the receiving end of the money. The reason I don't think it's a good idea is because I think it'll help attract new teachers, but it won't help retain them. And I feel like when teachers leave Memorial and other schools, they are not asked why they leave. Here are some of the reasons. The job has become overwhelmingly and almost impossible to do on most days. We're continuing on the receiving end of requests for additional paperwork, and it seems like we're an afterthought of how much time this work is going to take. While I understand most of this paperwork is a result of legal issues, I beg to argue these legal issues are a result of poor staffing and teachers being stretched too thin to properly fill out the paperwork to begin with. I have 17 students on my caseload. In addition to their annual IEP meeting, each student is involved with at least 1 to 3 additional community agencies who all want a meeting as well. At the high school level, I'm asked to meet with Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, Children Come First, Journey Mental Health, Madison College, Madison Psychiatric Hospital, Dane County social workers, therapists, tutors, autism specialists, and translators. Most special ed teachers are working 55 to 60 hours per week because they can't do their paperwork during class time, because all they do is they're in class and they're in meetings. They're continually told to mainstream students into regular classes, bring them into the community for vocational experiences. Every day I watch my coworkers try to figure out how to take 4 students to a job site with 1 SEA. 1 is a flight risk. 1 needs 2 adults per person because they're physically aggressive. 1 is verbally disruptive. Another has medical issues. Yet 1 person is asked to do this. And at the end of the day, that teacher in SEA is told that there have been administrative complaints and parent complaints and threats of lawsuits because they didn't include the students fully. That's why special ed teachers are leaving. This year I was asked to revise every IEP for a student with a short schedule. I spend part of my day at an off-campus program, and I know how limited and poor the instructional opportunities are, and I'm the teacher at one of those sites. However, that is the reason why I'm asked to do the paperwork. Okay. If I can say one more thing, I've almost quit twice. 12 years ago, MTI helped find additional staffing. A year and a half ago, MTI told me they couldn't. I came home bruised every day for 2.5 months. This time I made an appointment about retirement options. Look at the school profiles on the MMSD website. 42% of high school students and 51% of school staff say they feel safe. That means nearly 50% of students and staff don't feel safe. Special ed staffing is related to school safety, and I can only hope you retain or increase the current levels. That is what will help keep special ed teachers in Madison. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends the public appearances with regards to the preliminary budget, and so now we'll move on to general public appearances. I'll remind folks who haven't been here before or haven't spoken before that you have 3 minutes, and we will start with Don White, followed by Jennifer Quinn.
Hello, my name is Don White. I am a national board certified teacher and have been the algebra teacher at Blackhawk for over 20 years. I am here to ask for your help to maintain the excellent student achievement we have had. Here are some points to consider. First, student growth. In the past 5 years, my average student has shown math growth of over 2.5 years in the year they are in my class. I've been recognized as one of the top teachers in the district based on these results. Second, student diversity. I have helped the Algebra 1 program at Blackhawk grow from a very small one that had lacked socioeconomic and cultural diversity into a larger and more inclusive group that much better matches the mosaic of cultures at our school. I believe that we are now the neighborhood middle school with the most diverse Algebra 1 classes. Third, preparation for high school and beyond. Students taking algebra in middle school need to have a teacher certified in 9th grade math in order to earn high school credits. Ironically, I'm the only teacher at my school certified this way. High school math certified teachers are in short supply, and even fewer are interested in teaching in the middle schools. Despite facts like these, the Human Resources Department has decided that there no longer is a position for me at Blackhawk. This is because I need to continue to work part-time, which I've been doing the past 2 years and is medically documented. They have offered me a part-time position at another school, which is all they're legally obligated to do. But I ask you this, is this in the best interest of our North Side students and families, or just what's most convenient for them to do? I have offered several different part-time options as a solution. I've even offered to return to a full-time teaching position once I realized that a minimum of 58 students have already signed up for algebra this year, enough to support a full-time algebra-only teaching load. I love working at Blackhawk. My principal and the staff I work with are amazing, and they've allowed me to flourish as an educator despite my medical diagnosis. I trust that with your support, we'll find a way to reconsider this decision. I hope that the district will focus on what's best for all of the students and the families, not just what is most convenient for their systems. Systems that are in direct contradiction to many of the district's goals, including maintaining a thriving workforce and building long-term relationships with students and families. I want nothing more than to continue to do what I know I do best. Teach algebra, educate the students, and serve the families of my Northside community. Thank you for your time and consideration of this matter.
Thank you. Jennifer Quinn, followed by Martha Sonaro.
So I think I know all of you via email. I know Dean and TJ and Kate and Nikki, and I know I've talked to Jen and Gloria, but I'm here to support Mr. White tonight. My daughter is going to be in 8th grade at Blackhawk, and I've been through a lot with Blackhawk since she started in 6th grade, and now we're going into 8th grade, and it seems like we're going to have to start all over again. But she wrote me, I asked her how her feelings were about Mr. White, and so She wrote a paragraph, and I said only write short because I only have 3 minutes to talk. But this is what she wrote. And it's pretty telling when it's coming from a 13-year-old. She says it is important to keep Mr. White at Blackhawk to teach algebra because my friends and I have worked very hard in 7th grade to get into algebra. If we don't have algebra, we will get bored in math because we have already learned that material and we are ready for algebra. Also, what about the kids taking the bridge course for algebra? They are doing this course because they really want to get into algebra. It is good to keep Mr. White so we can be more proficient in math in high school. So don't act like school is a big corporation and keep Mr. White as our Algebra 1 teacher. That comes from my 13-year-old. And if she notices that schools kind of are acting like a big corporation, that says a lot. But on the other hand, I'm really worried about these kids that have worked so hard to get up to these classes and who's going to tell them if Mr. White doesn't return. And I'm just wondering who would be willing to go and tell 3 classes of algebra students, oh, too bad you don't get algebra this year even though you worked so hard. Sorry. So I asked the district, what will we do? Sorry, I've never spoken before in front of all you guys. What will we do that is best for Blackhawk students and families? How will the district ensure that students will not only have a certified and qualified algebra teacher, but one who's experienced and successful for middle schoolers? Mr. White has been with the district for 20 years and he's an integral part of the Blackhawk community. His family lives in the community. He's involved in many school activities and it would be hard to not have him return. I also ask if it's been fine for him to teach part-time the last 2 years, why all of a sudden the change? Blackhawk hasn't really grown. I think the numbers have stayed about 400 the last couple years. You know, I'm just asking for you to keep his position. It would be impossible to find another teacher to replace him, his experience, the successfulness. I mean, these kids are moving up to East Gloria, so that's your alma mater, so you should be pushing for this. These kids will go in. I mean, my daughter wants to be a theoretical physicist, so I think further she can get math in middle school, we'll get her up through high school. But I'm just asking you to do what's best for the students and to keep Mr. White as an algebra teacher.
Thank you. Martha Sonaro, followed by Cheryl Schenk. It'd be great if the next person was ready to come up. Okay.
Guidance, praise, discipline, love. This is a parent's voice. Time for bed, eat your vegetables, play nicely with your friends. This also is a parent's voice. Parents can offer their children the best and the most direct opportunity to grow from infancy. A parent often expands their role to teacher, nurse, playmate, even advocate, and even more so when a child has individual and special needs that have become a household normal experience, and whatever the case may mean to each individual family. As a child grows, a parent's voice stays with them to guide them and to comfort them during their day. And why am I focused on a parent's voice? Well, my daughter is about to enter kindergarten with an active IEP after having an inactive IEP for a full year. No one knows her better than my husband and I do right now, apart from her aide from Head Start, who can attest to her classroom activity from last year. Last month, we had to have 2 sessions of an IEP due to the drastic and positive changes since last year. MMS IEP team from last year did not offer their support since they believed that having a second year of an extended day 4K program would make her do the opposite and regress. The exact opposite happened, and now she has the opportunity to thrive as a student upon entering into 5K. My voice was shut out last year, and it is not feeling the exact opposite this year. There are still certain degrees where I feel that I could be heard better. A parent's supposed to be an equal member of the IEP team if they choose to participate as such, And that is true how is this true when I'm allowed to attend the meeting, but I still don't feel like everyone's listening? All of the therapists have added their goals and specific info for next year, and when I make a request that's regarding my daughter's educational needs, and that's all it turns out to be, is I get a request that's made as a note that not everybody gets to read. Simply making a request that may or may not be validated as a need within the classroom doesn't feel like I'm an equal member. I have to have a voice to a larger audience, which is why I'm here, in an area where I feel that parents' voices are seen to being slowly muted out. This needs to change, and the IEP process needs to be more inclusive and supportive rather than intimidating. I brought with me today the new IEP. It is 33 pages long worth of information about my daughter for next year. There is no spot in here that actually has a section saying requests and goals of what the parent would like to see happen during the new year. This does not make it an equal team program, and this needs to change. The inclusiveness does not reflect as such. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Cheryl Schenk, followed by Molly Schenk.
Hello, thank you for allowing me to speak. My daughter Molly, who you will hear from in just a moment, just finished her first year at Black Hawk. It was her first year in the Madison Metro School District. She had previously gone to Madison Country Day. That transition to public school was a smooth one, due in part to teachers like Mr. White. This last year has been a difficult one for us regarding her mental health, but the personnel at school, and especially Mr. White, have been nothing but supportive. Having just come from a residential facility, we were faced with the decision of letting her go on the 8th grade field trip, or trip to DC in New York, and knowing that Don was going to be leading the trip gave us enough comfort and confidence to let her go, even though she had just been out of the residential facility for 3 weeks. He is a part of the Black Hawk School, he's a part of the community, and he is a true asset. He needs to stay no matter what that takes. Thank you.
Thank you. Molly Schenk, followed by Jen Makovic.
Is this good? Okay. I'm just going to assume it is because no one's correcting me. So forgive me if this is not super formal or super well thought or put together, because I had about 45 minutes to write this on the car ride home from summer camp, so bear with me here. So hi, I'm Molly. I'm a normal, for the most part, 8th grader going into high school. I was in Mr. White's algebra class, just to give you some background information. I started this year off not so well, coming back from a hospital stay into virtually no treatment, stopping cold turkey. Mr. White was one of the few people who made me feel like I could be honest instead of saying I'm okay or I'm fine. He started off the year with encouragement and praise. He helped me through parts of the math I was missing from not going to school for the last month and a half of 7th grade. His help and strategies helped me to understand my material more. That brings us to the fact that he could help countless numbers of young people through their stay here at Black Hawk. 8th grade is a hard place to be, and you're still figuring out who you are while trying to balance schoolwork with extracurriculars. Mr. White needs to stay here at Black Hawk to help other people like me, through the roughest spot in their life so far. Now, you've probably heard middle school was the worst years of my life. That doesn't make the transition to high school any easier. Balancing all the things I mentioned and also preparing for high school is not an easy task. That also leads us to why I personally want him to stay here. He has helped so many people. The staff here in our Black Hawk community want him to stay here. He is a valued member of our little society in itself. No one will be happy to see him go. We need him here at our school. He helped me, and I know I'm a handful to take care of. So I don't see why he can't help other people. Think of all the lives he could change just by being in them. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Jen Makovic, followed by Joy Graded.
Hi, my name is Jen Makovic, and I'm here to contribute to the ongoing conversation about Leopold Elementary. The extreme difference between the dual language immersion sections and the English language instruction program is detrimental to both the students and to the community. I am here as a parent of a child on the waitlist for the DLI program. This year there are 34 of us, and I speak on behalf of several of them. We've all heard so many very good things about the DLI program and how important it is. We have not heard those nice things about the English language side. And we are feeling kind of left out of the process at this point in time, seeing as in our children will now be in the English language side. And I'm sure that I trust that all of you are aware of the commentary around the school. We've been hearing it from current and former teachers that they would not send their children there. We've heard that from members of the board. We've heard that from people across the community, that they would not have their children at Leopold if they were in the English language program. However, I live a quarter of a mile from Leopold. I want to have my kids at the community school. I have spoken with several of the families of the waitlisted children, and we want to be the families that change this school. We want to be engaged in the process, and we want to support efforts to improve the school for all students, not just the students in the DLI program. I heard recently from the principal of the school that there is probably going to be a new DLI section. That would be great if my child were to get into it, but it does not address the issues. And I'm here to support the school regardless of my child's status. You know, I trust that you guys are all aware of the issues, but I believe that everybody benefits if the waitlisted families feel confident enough in the English language classrooms that we can keep our kids there. I ask that the board and the principal deliberately and directly engage with the parents of the incoming kindergartners in the English language instruction program, and to help us understand that our children are going to be safe there and supported in a supportive education environment. I would also ask for additional detail to be made public on the school's improvement plan with specific attention to an explanation of how the school plans to create a more balanced classroom. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I am here in support of Don White, my teacher. I attended his class during the 2011 to 2012 school year. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a former student of Don White's. So thank you for your time and thanks for listening. I think once you know what Mr. White means to the Black Hawk community and understand the impact he's made over the last 2 decades, the right decision will be pretty clear. So as a part of that community, I guess I'd just like to share my experience in his class and how that's changed my life as a result. So despite it being the highest level course available at Black Hawk, most of Mr. White's algebra students perform well beyond expectations. This is because we learn algebra, but we also learn how to be a successful student. My time in Mr. White's class pushed me as a student, helping me form work ethic and study habits that I have constantly applied throughout high school and into my first 2 years of college. Recently, I've been accepted to UW-Madison with a full-ride scholarship, and I can't say I'd be in this fortunate position without Mr. White. In terms of character, the example he set has stuck with me. If you spend any time in his class, you know it's apparent how much he cares, and he puts a lot of time into your success. He pursues his passion of teaching while doing more than his part to help his community, and that's exactly the sort of person I hope to be. Considering the long-term benefits Mr. White offers as an educator and as a role model for young minds, it should be easy to see what a strong asset he is to the community and why we don't want to lose him. No one is more qualified to guide young students through academic growth and character development. Moving Mr. White from the community he has flourished in for more than 20 years deprives students yet to come of their best opportunity to be all they can, throughout school and onward. Whatever is gained in removing him from this position, I can assure you it's less than what he can offer and what he has offered to the Black Hawk community. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our public appearances for tonight. Next on our agenda is President's announcements and reports. And so a lot of good news to share tonight. Last month, the Madison Community Foundation awarded MMSD's community schools a challenge grant of $1.1 million at the 75th annual Madison Gives event. This is the largest grant in the organizational's history and will greatly support our two current community schools, Mendota and Leopold, in addition to two new community schools, Lakeview and Hawthorne Elementary. The board and the Madison Metropolitan School District sincerely appreciate the Madison Community Foundation for this extremely generous grant, which will help bring our district closer to our community. I'd also like to thank the staff who partnered and wrote and got the materials that made this possible. So it's a great testament to them. Next piece of good news is 4 of our MMSD graduates completed the MAN Scholars Program and will continue their education at the next level attending college. The celebration was held June 1st at the Wisconsin Institute for Discovery. The 4 MAN Scholars from our district are Elia Whitfield of La Follette, Deliha Carter of La Follette, Janicia Petaway of West, and Flodicia Burnett of West. The board congratulates all 4 of these scholars for their hard work and dedication and wishes each of them much success moving forward. The Boys and Girls Club announced last month that the entire Avid Top senior class will graduate from high school and attend college this upcoming fall. There are 201 seniors from the Madison Metropolitan School District among the graduates. The Boys and Girls Club of Dane County received an outstanding award for leadership in creating college opportunities from the Avid National Office. The board congratulates all of the Avid scholars and thanks the Boys and Girls Club of Dane County for their outstanding work. And I will add that our staff in each one of our schools and each one of our classrooms who make that possible every single day. So thanks very much. Okay.
We got fireworks too.
We good? Okay. Okay. As long as everyone's okay, will we proceed? Okay. So next on the agenda is the superintendent's announcements and reports, and with that, I will turn it over to Jen.
Thanks, Mary. Mike Berry's going to join me, so let's give him a minute to come up here and get settled, and then we'll get started. No.
Pardon?
Please decide to skip it.
So we're obviously going to have to change the budget for the audio system in the auditorium.
Right.
And the video system.
We could just zoom through it. But we'll get started while the presentation is coming along. What do you say, Mike?
Let's give it a try.
Mike and I are here to present the preliminary budget for the 18-19 school year to the school board. We're very proud of this budget. We believe it represents our goals, our priorities, our values as a school district. And we think it's one that we can be really proud of. I want to thank the board for your support and guidance over all the months that we work on the budget every year. I want to thank the public for their guidance. I want to thank the staff for their guidance, and I want to especially thank the core budget team that consists of Lisa Quistad, Deirdre Hargrove-Kriegoff, Kelly Ruppel, Candy Steffen, Ross McPherson, all who have given a lot of time, blood, sweat, and tears to bring the preliminary budget to you tonight. I want to especially thank Mike Berry when we have the opportunity. This is Mike's 32nd budget proposal in his lifetime. Yeah, and this will be his last preliminary budget with us. And yeah, I'm indebted to this man for the rest of my life. And can we give Mike a special round of applause? If some people may not be aware that Mike will be retiring this fall, and we've had the great privilege of benefiting from his expertise for the 5 years that I've been here. So Mike and I are going to get right into it. Mike, do you want to kick it off?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate that. I thought I'd just keep doing these budgets until I got it right. And hopefully this is it, right? This is the one. Yeah. So with the added challenge of not putting it up on the screen. So tonight we have the updated June 25th version of the preliminary budget. And this obviously replaces the original April version. So the document that's in board docs, the printed one that you have at your place, the budget that's up on the website for the school district and the budget office is have all been updated to this June 25th version. So there, no versionitis, I hope. The timeline that we're operating under is simply this. We began the work back in November, December with some previews of budget and high-level budget strategy. All of that ultimately resulted in an April 1st draft. And that began a kind of a 2-month kickoff of public input. And the document that you have today for June really reflects the input that we've received from the board, from the community, from our labor folks. There we go. See? All right. Thank you. Here we go. Okay. So this 2-month period from April to June is meant to test the original proposal and give us a chance to improve it and revise it and so on. And that's hopefully what we've managed to build into this June 25th version of the document. We will be back in October with a final budget approval for the upcoming school year. This is a preliminary budget because a couple of the really key revenue factors are unknown to us. Enrollment, equalization aid, and tax levy. So we use estimates, come back in October with the final results. So we thought we would go back to this very familiar slide. We've used this since January, and Jen and I will kind of tag team this, and hopefully this will serve as a quick review of the overall budget strategy.
Yeah, we just wanted to spend a little time on the highlights. We think this is the strongest budget we built for a variety of reasons, many of them on this list. As you know, we've included a base wage increase of 2.13%, which is the maximum allowable by the state. This is just one component of the total compensation package, which is estimated to be a 5.1% increase over the current year budget. It's the largest compensation package increase since 2011. It includes step and lane advancement, it includes health insurance and other employee benefits, and targeted increases. The targeted increases aren't listed on this slide, but they're in the budget book. A $230,000 recurring cost to increase the EA-SEA wage scale. That's following the $15 minimum wage improvement that we made last year. We're also building in $170,000 adjustment to the principal salary schedule, and that's because we're trying to figure out how to adjust and make a more differentiated approach to principal pay, because principals of larger and more complex school assignments, that is in no way now factored into the salary schedule for principals. I do want to acknowledge that there were we believe and agree not enough information provided to the board on how that would be structured. And what we'd like to propose when you get to the point where you're voting and considering the budget that we're handing over to you, we would like to propose that this remain in the budget, knowing that we haven't yet provided you sufficient information to make a final decision, basically as a reserve of sorts, up to $170,000, because we feel like we want to deal with these long-standing inequities with a final decision made in October. If the board decides in October not to do it, that funding falls back into the budget. We can come back to that later, but I want to alert everyone that it's built in. Yeah, let me pass it back to Mike to share a couple of other highlights.
Okay, so the second part of our high-level strategy was stability and employee benefits plans, and this is really almost entirely about health insurance. We made a major change in the prior school year and wanted, this projected current year, wanted to maintain the existing health insurance plan for next year, and we were able to do that. We had a partnership with our labor folks and met with the HMOs and negotiated a rate ultimately that fit into this budget, and we're able to maintain the health insurance plan. And I also want to recognize the HR department who worked on a new life insurance benefit, which is a substantial improvement at no additional cost, and actually removes what was at one point an employee premium contribution for life insurance. Now it's just universal, it's employer paid, and it doesn't cost any more in the budget. So a nice small item, but what I like about it is more the orientation that it shows to try to make these budget line items better every year.
That's right. We also funded very favorable class sizes this year, aligned to the new class size policy the board approved some months ago. That's all about helping teachers build strong relationships with students and better meet individual students' needs. And we've included a very targeted set of priority actions this year, all aimed at accelerating results for youth of color and families, youth of families who are low income. That includes the Early College STEM Academy at Madison College, our first pilot year, which is all about getting more students of color, first generation students, young women into STEM fields, a strategy for youth re-engagement that focuses on justice-involved youth who are currently out of school and we want to bring them back in, as well as youth who are just most at risk of not graduating from high school, and a community schools expansion, which is all about strengthening family partnerships in high-needs schools that are also located in high-needs communities. So very proud of this very, we think, tight and targeted package of priority actions this year.
Okay, last two bullets are mine. Repurposing of existing resources. But the challenge here came sort of late in the budget, and obviously we're on the hunt all the time for resources that can be put to better use within the budget. The challenge this time was around funding base wage at 2.13% and how to move money within the budget to make that happen without disturbing the schools and other critical work that happens across the district. So you know that in your June 25th budget there's a separate schedule, it's on page 156, that shows you how we did that, but I think the team rallied and did good work to make that happen, and that was essential to delivering on the base wage in this budget. Yep. And lastly, and this is, I think, important, and just bear with me on this, managing the tax levy authority with multi-year perspective. You know that one of our goals was to save at least or preserve a couple $1 million from this year's levy authority and preserve it for next year when there will be a new state budget, which is unknown to us. Obviously, just a smart move to protect ourselves against a potentially less than friendly state budget. But beyond that, there are some other multi-year perspective items that I think we need to mention. The first is the compensation plan itself. I think that it needs to be reviewed really from multiple perspectives, not just, certainly, but not just its financial viability, but also It's external comparability, the hard-to-fill issues that the board looked at earlier this spring, the career path concepts that we had under discussion earlier this year are all still part of that mix, along with financial viability. So I think we've got a lot of work to do on the compensation plan. That's important work, requiring deep examination. And then my other, I think, key thought around multi-year perspective is that this budget benefits tremendously from the tailwind provided by the referendum to exceed revenue limits from a couple of years ago and from the TID 25 resources. Those resources essentially expire in 2020. So what can we do now to set ourselves up well for 2020 and beyond? I think it's a question we need to start asking right away. So keep that in mind. So this is a very good budget, but obviously there's always another challenge around the corner. These last couple of slides are sort of the perfunctory required slides for the financial presentation. You can't put the whole 200-page budget book up on the screen. I'm sure you're relieved to hear that. So just a few highlights. The operating budget is $406.8 million. That is essentially the general fund and the special ed fund combined. 3.18% increase in expenditures, budget to budget, 3.18. The all funds budget is $456 million. That includes the capital fund, the food service fund, the community service fund, and so on. That is a 4.18% increase, excuse me, 4.10 increase. These are on like page 19, I think, of your budget book. The all funds budget increase is a little more than the operating because that's where the security money is. It's in Fund 41, the security plan money. Tax levy is up 4.57% based on our estimates now. Our target was 4. That number has been pushed a little bit by two factors. One is equalization aid loss, which is kind of a chronic condition we've been facing lately, multiple years of that. And then also the introduction of this novelty of the 2X charter program, which of course we have to levy for and then pass those funds along to support that independent school. So that is now reflected in our tax levy, 4.57. You can see the totals for the levy itself, $310 million. These are estimates on the tax rate increase, $11.71. Average home impact estimate, $81. These numbers will be revised in October. We believe these are conservative numbers. They should improve between now and October if our estimates prove to be correct. Next steps in this budget are, I think it's kind of almost a summary slide. Equalization aid will be reported July 1st as an estimate. It's not worth much, that estimate. The real numbers come out October 15th. Updated enrollment, we'll know the third Friday count in late September. Open enrollment and independent 2X enrollment at the same time. Tax-based growth should be robust, stronger than we used in this budget. We used just a 3.5% increase. We think it'll be at least that and more. And then we've got some homework to do to certify the levy and adopt the final October budget. So that's where we've been and where we're going. And I'll pause here. And
I think it's time to pass it back to you, Mary.
Yeah, absolutely. Nikki.
I'd like to make an amendment to the budget before we vote on the base wage 26.
Okay.
Procedurally, I think you might have, can you make an amendment before there's a motion? This is your job, not mine.
Sorry. You need to make a motion first, so if you could just hold off on that.
Yeah, so let's...
We'd like to make an amendment first to pass the budget. I'm sorry, we'd make a motion first prior to making amendment to the budget.
So, Nikki, if you can just...
Sure.
We'll come back to you on that. Okay, TJ.
There's a number of things that I would like to discuss on the board, but right now I would just like to have a question, and maybe, I don't know when the appropriate time to bring the things up for discussion are, but the question is, on the under levy statement, I think it's the slide back there, the initial budget, the April budget, had a Fund 10 levy of $281,281,493. The current one has a Fund 10 levy of, what is it, 276? So to me, that's a minimum of a $5 million under levy on Fund 10. So what am I missing here? This is the question.
First of all, it's an excellent question. That $5 million is being levied by the district in Fund 41 to support the safety and security in investments. We essentially did it that way because it serves a long-term interest of the school district to do it that way. So it's still a full levy. It's the same levy. It's a split
because Fund 10 counts as in that piece of the levy. All right, that makes sense. Or will count as we spend it.
Yes.
That's right.
Any other questions?
The other thing, I guess the other thing is that there's some issues that, well, I'll go ahead, and if this isn't the right time, maybe please stop me and we'll move it to the other places. Yeah. First off, Michael, thank you for your work over this year and the other years. I am probably the harshest critic of the budget and the greatest admirer of your work, so both at once. So I do appreciate how, I think I came up to you, and I'm going to leave this on. I ducked my head in your office a few months ago and just said, this is tight, and it is. It's a very tight budget, and it's appreciated the work you do, and that I also appreciate the responsiveness we come with. I think as a board that there is room that we can have among ourselves to improve the budget process. And I think that there are places where we need to be more proactive in terms of, we said at the beginning of this year that we wanted compensation done first, and then that didn't happen. And we could have done more on that. We had a staffing plan presented in February, but when the April budget comes out, there were some things that I think were surprising in how the staffing plan came out. So I think we could have been more proactive in that area. So this is a conversation for the future with that. I've got kind of my theme here is before October, and I think that the superintendent referenced that in relation to the administration, the principal and AP pay, but there's a few other things that I think that kind of fall into that same category for me. That certainly does, and when I say before October, I think we have two choices with the before October items, or three choices actually. One, we can just put it in reserve, just do that. Two is we can put it in reserve with conditions. We can say that, before this moves from reserve. And three is we can pull it out and say, bring it back in October, or bring it back before October. Those are kind of the three choices we have. I don't like the first. I'm kind of split between the other two. In reserve with conditions, or pull it out now. And that applies to the to the principal and AP piece. It applies to the opportunity youth for me, and I can talk in more detail about these if anyone wants with why it applies to these. It applies to the family and schools together, $65,000, and the condition there is simply we're going to go for grant money for it. If by October the grant money's not there, I want it in the budget. I think that's important professional development work. If we want our community schools and that work to be successful, that's really important. The final one is the most difficult of these, and that is special education staffing, special education allocated and unallocated staffing. I woke up this morning expecting to do a budget amendment for $500,000 to restore unallocated staffing. I looked at some numbers, had Michael provided some further numbers today to the board. Following the email Mike sent to the board, we had a conversation, and from that conversation I became convinced that the issue isn't what we have allocated for special education funding and staffing, it's that we're not spending what we've allocated. And that when we hear from parents like we've heard tonight, we've heard many other times, about the experiences of their students, and we hear from special education teachers about why teachers are leaving because they feel overwhelmed, and we hear, you know, just that the health, safety, and education of these students is that the needs are not being met. And then we hear that the $1 million we allocated last year was unspent. We hear that there is IDEA flow-through money, which we have not accessed, that is sitting there. So it would be dishonest of me to propose that we add more to that pile of unspent money, but I sit here very frustrated. How do I, or we collectively, take this funding and make sure it's applied to student success instead of sitting there unspent? And I thought we sent a very clear message last year with the budget amendments around that, but apparently that didn't happen. And I don't know how to send a clearer message. So when I say when we do these things with conditions, you know, the best conditions I have on this is the email we had today said that there's $200 million, $2 million in unallocated positions in special education. Additionally, there is a multi-million-dollar sum of IDEA flow-through reserve. I think prior to passing the October budget, we need to know what's going on with that money, and know what the plans are, and know what the processes by which we move from unallocated to allocated are, and where these processes are breaking down. I wish it was as easy as adding $500,000 and that I could say, I feel good that I've helped with special education staffing, but it's not that easy apparently. So this is the one, and out of all these things I listed here, to me this is absolutely the most important of them. And it's also the most difficult. And I see the superintendent both nodding and looking to respond. I think, am I right?
Yeah.
With the chair's permission, I would like to hear what the superintendent has to say.
Yeah, and then if just process-wise, and I know TJ, you had started with that. I'm thinking after the discussion with regards to this unallocated special ed money, is that we actually make the motions. And then we can make the amendments, discuss those. So on the other issues that TJ brought up, I would prefer that we handle those as proposed amendments and have the discussion around those. Does that make sense? Along with what Nikki had proposed. So Jen, why don't you, if you could respond to TJ's
point. For now, I want to talk about all the things that you listed, TJ, but I will focus on the special ed allocation. I really appreciate your comments on this. And I know that there was a lot of debate and not everyone agreed with our bringing in ERS, for example, to look at how we allocate, distribute, and spend the resources that we have in student services, inclusive of special ed, but that's precisely why, because this isn't just about dollars. It's about finding people who are qualified for those positions. It's about the speed at which we hire them. It's about equitable distribution of those positions in a way that makes sense. Timely distribution of those positions. It is so much more complex than just the dollar amount. So that's why I was nodding. I agree with all those issues. And even as much as I appreciated the amendment back when it happened, and we had a discussion about it at that time, I think I understood in that moment that it wasn't going to actually fix the problem, and that it is more complicated than that. The recommendations from that particular study, which is mainly focused on special ed, but also on behavior related positions and other positions in student services. We'll be getting that later this summer, and then able to bring that set of our recommendations so that we can build a stronger budget and processes around it related to special ed going into the next budget season. So just want to validate some of the things that you've expressed and tell you that they're not understood by us, and that we are taking action, and that is some of the action that we're taking. Okay.
Okay. Then I'm going to move on to the base wage motions. Mikey? Okay. I move that the Board of Education ratify the Madison Teachers, Inc. Educational Support Employees Association Collective Bargaining Agreement for base wage increase for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Recusing.
Second.
Kate seconded. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 6-0-1. Okay. I move that the Board of Education ratify the Madison Teachers, Inc. Teacher Unit Collective Bargaining Agreement for base wage increase for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. I move that the Board of Education ratify the Madison Teachers, Inc. Substitute Teachers Unit Collective Bargaining Agreement for base wage increase for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. I move that the Board of Education ratify the Building and Construction Trades Council of South Central Wisconsin Collective Bargaining Agreement for base wage increase for the period of July 1, 2018 through June 30th, 2019.
I'd like to issue an amendment on this.
Second?
I'd like to issue an amendment.
Yeah.
I have it on my phone, sorry. If I may read from that. I would like to, currently there are 11 individuals in custodial food service.
This isn't.
I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, it's
It'll be
the,
the next one, I think.
That's the next one. I do this every time. I apologize.
We'll give you a heads up.
we're getting ready, we're getting.
Just to clarify here, that the AFSCME does not have a collective bargaining agreement, and the custodial unit is part of AFSCME, so it is none of these motions. It is simply built into the budget.
That's right.
Okay.
Thank you, TJ.
So
Thank you,
that's
TJ.
it.
That's where I got
AFSCME
confused.
did not recertify, and therefore they do not have a collective bargaining.
That's where I got confused.
Thank you, TJ. So we do have a motion and a second. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, so now we are on to our budget adoption motion. I move that the board approve and adopt the 2018-19 preliminary budget as proposed in the total amount of $509,049,398 or $456,331,795 net of interfund transfers, inclusive of all funds with said proposed budget having been identified in the document entitled DPI Preliminary Budget Adoption Format dated June 25th, 2018.
Now I wish to make my amendment, and I apologize for messing up the timing. Never did quite mess with that. Currently there are 11 individuals who, from AFSCME, who have switched positions from either custodial to food service or custodial to security, and their seniority didn't transfer with them. We've now changed this in the handbook, but 11 people did not get the amount of seniority or that wage paid. So I'm requesting that the years of service they earned will be counted after they switch position, and I request we use the fund balance to fund $32,000 to request this handbook issue.
Second.
Any discussion? TJ.
I'm not 100% clear how the 32,000 was calculated and what it covers and what it doesn't. Whether when Neil Rainford testified tonight, he said that it is only going forward. I've heard other people say that it's making up for the past, and I would just like to have clarity that is this changing where they sit on the seniority base pay for next year with no retrospective adjustment, or this year I guess is how we are, July 1st, or is it changing where they sit for next year with a retrospective makeup pay?
Mike, do you want to address? Okay.
Sure. So the we've called this a retroactive item. Typically, that is interpreted as back pay, right? I think this is a slightly different animal. Mm-hmm. This is adjusting your placement on the salary schedule now and going forward.
Yeah.
In doing that, the wages of those 11 employees will be $32,000 higher than they otherwise would have been if we didn't make this adjustment. So you have essentially a recurring cost, which may or may not, we might want to make a regular budget adjustment, not a fund balance adjustment on that.
I was going to recommend
and we have some
next,
ideas.
but, yeah.
So does that help clarify?
I'm going to ask one more thing, that you just said wages, but I assume that also includes WRS and Medicare and the 32,000.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just making sure that it wasn't simply, yeah, that it was all that piece. Okay, just checking. And your suggestion on how to fund it other than fund balance?
Well, given that it's recurring in nature, I think fund balance should be left for one-time items. My suggestion would be simply go to page 158, line 22. That's where we're making the adjustments within the central office budget, which is currently a $100,000 challenge. It becomes a $132,000 challenge. We think we can handle that. And I think that's just a better balance.
Yes, it'd be.
But that has been as a friendly comment, Nikki.
And I would amend it to do so.
Okay, so so then this is a vote on the amendment that has been moved, seconded, and revised to, rather than fund balance, to take it out of the operating adjustments. So Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, so we are now, there is a motion, amended motion to, on the table for the budget adoption.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Are there any other amendments?
I'd like to amend the budget to require the principal and AP compensation adjustment plan be approved by the Board of Education prior to the October budget meeting. Prior to, not at, but prior to.
Second. Can you explain that?
I think that there's a lot of open questions around it, and I don't want those questions to wait to the October budget meeting. I want us to have a chance to have a discussion and an approval of it, and I also want an explicit approval of the plan as opposed to simply feedback around the plan. So those are the kind of two pieces to it. One is the timing, and the other is the explicit approval.
Mm-hmm.
So this is essentially turning the reserve
It is a
into
it's actualizing the reserve. Correct. Yeah. It's
your
placing the reserve, but it's a
I
conditional reserve.
I'm just going to think out loud here for a moment. I certainly appreciate the intent, and we would want to make sure that the board got to heavily inform and ultimately vote via the budget on the proposal. I think I'm worried that if the board is voting on the actual schedule, I don't think the board has voted on previous principal salary schedules. And so I'm just trying to figure out what that would look like in the future. If we ever wanted to make any adjustments to the salary schedule, would be future bound to bring that salary schedule back to the board. So that's just what I'm wondering about, and I want to lay my wondering on the table. I don't know if I need to call for help on this one. I just want to make sure you know what you're doing, because you'll bind, you know, kind of future administrators and boards to a process of approval that you haven't done in the past. So I would ask you to consider that before voting on TJ's amendment.
Nikki, is this on this
Yes.
amendment? Okay.
Yes.
I think that the principal issue is very important, but I think the board should have some say on the principal schedule. I think we need to know. I think this issue should come to the board, and I'm very comfortable with it being recurring.
Jen, you seem, did you want to
Yeah.
make any other comments?
I just want to reiterate that the proposal would certainly come to the board. The board would vote on funding the proposal via the budget in October. You could always vote on the budget earlier if that's what you're recommending, TJ. I just want to be clear on what the board is voting on. Is it the expenditure related to the proposal, or is it the actual structure of the principal salary schedule?
And how we choose to compensate our principals. I think that is very, very much the board's business.
Okay.
And I have no idea when this schedule was first set, or if there's ever been votes on it, or any adjustments have been made to it. I have no idea, and I think the fact that the board has no idea what's happened with that is problematic. I think that when we are paying, I think the principals are perhaps among the most important people in our district.
I would agree.
And I think that I think that it is very, very much in our purview.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second for the amendment. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That amendment passes 7-0. Okay.
I raised some issues around the Opportunity Youth, and again, this isn't a question of funding it or not funding it, but I do know that these issues had come up in previous discussions, and we got a summary of where their status is now. And I know I'm not 100% comfortable with the status where it is now, but if I'm the only board member who isn't comfortable with it, then I don't see any reason to put conditions or a hold on it, because it would just be an exercise in futility. So I guess that what I would like to hear is, you know, the issues that are of most concern to me are, number one is where it's located organizationally, and I know that other board members had raised issues about that. The exclusive use of NUPs and administrators, of non-union professionals, who cannot provide education, provide credits. I also have concerns, you know, I think Dell's speech tonight, when he spoke about that, though he was in support of this, I heard it in some ways as against it, because he was saying that there's these other, that how we've defined this issue is not perhaps the correct way to define it. And I think that defining where the focus, if you're going to have, you know, 4 people, we've got this universe of 450 students defined in some way, and these 4 people aren't going to be providing serious services to 450 students. There's going to be some subset of those, and I would like to know what that focus is in advance, and I would like to have a little better idea of what kind of services you're going to be providing. You know, it says to expand alternative opportunities, I believe it said, and these 4 people literally cannot expand alternatives. They can't they can't teach for credit. They're not licensed social workers. They're not psychologists. They're not counselors. I don't know what they're doing. So that's the second piece. And then third is...
Well, is this on Opportunity Youth?
This is Opportunity Youth.
Okay, okay.
I just
want to make sure you didn't move on.
Is that we've had a little bit of change on what success looks like, but not a whole lot. So, but again, if I'm the only one uncomfortable, it's an exercise in futility to do anything that's around the budget. So that's why I'm not making a motion yet, but I would like to have a short discussion.
So Nikki and then Kate.
My issue with the Opportunity Youth, besides what TJ said, which I heartily agree with all of, is I also want to put it in there, and it hasn't happened yet, but I want to make sure that it's not going to be used in a segregated manner to create segregated services for students, both of color and of disabilities. What bothers me about the micro school and how those funds were used, especially, is how it was put together. Namely, that we missed the IEP deadline for 10 students and had to issue compensatory services, which we had to pay for. In my opinion, if we're going to do that, I want to know in advance. I want to know how the program works, and if it ends up being in a separate setting outside the classroom, I want to have a rationale explaining it.
Kate?
Thanks, TJ. I have pretty serious concerns about some of the topics that you've raised. The org structure, I think we've talked about at length, the integration with special education, et cetera. And I think we have an obligation to keep moving really fast in this area, or maybe to start moving fast in this area, to start moving. You know, we haven't done a good job supporting our Opportunity Youth with the diversity of kinds of programs that are going to support student success. And so I'm a little bit torn because I genuinely don't think the plan is as robust as any of us would like to see. And I think we need to push forward. So I might split the difference here. Like I would love to have this very early on our agenda to discuss back at an instruction work group to get much more clarity on what's happening, how are we rendering services, not just having central staff that are kind of facilitating and ensuring that we're integrating with our special education resources, et cetera. So I'm a little bit torn here, but I do think we need to keep going.
Yeah, I do not disagree with anything that TJ or Nikki, Kate says, but I feel that the need and the urgency to move forward, to make sure for September we have things in place. I think each week, each month that goes by, we're undermining a successful implementation. And I do believe, like, I have a certain amount of trust, TJ, that the administration's going to come forward with more of the details as these are worked out. I think there has been a lot of progress, but also just wrapped up and learned a lot of lessons from the micro school that I think that we need to take into account. So I see this as one of those investments that we need to make. Yes, it's not 100% tied up with all the loose strings, but I also think we shouldn't tie the hands of the administration. They're saying that they need this. They're saying that this is, I know we feel as a board that we can do more here. And I just urge others to make this investment, trust the administration, make sure that they come back with that plan addressing the issues, very legitimate issues that have been raised. Gloria, did you want to?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with everything that's been said. You know, I think I really like the intentionality of this, right? I think we are failing these kids anyway. They're in our schools, or sometimes not in our schools, right? So I really like the focus, and I think we have to put our resources and develop a really good comprehensive plan of how we serve these children. And it's about time, and we have to move quickly. And so I think I'm with you, TJ. There are some issues, and Kate, that we have to bring forth and really discuss ahead of time. But I really like that where the staff is moving on this and the good work that's been conducted so far. It's with purpose, and I think it's important.
Okay, I think we'll just finish up because those who haven't spoken yet before we actually decide if there's a motion.
There's no motion, but I've got 2 other items. And then
okay,
yeah, well,
Dean, did you?
Yeah, I just, everything that was discussed here has to be answered before this starts. That's all. And it's got to be put in place properly, anticipating some of the issues that we found out and learned from. But the need for this has been here ever since I've been on the board. So to not do this because we don't have everything quite figured out yet is okay with me as long as it gets figured out before it gets started. That's right. Anticipate all these things. There's no way we should have things started if an IEP isn't transferred over and in place before the person gets there. That's mistakes we can't afford to make, and there should be a process set up to make sure that doesn't happen. And any other issues that were brought up, but we got to get this going forward to address the things that Dell has brought to us ever since I've been on the board. You know, so there's a lot of work, a lot of discussion around all the right things that need to get done. Let's get this thing up and running and start building it in.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to, I support everything and that everyone said, so no use to going over it again. I'm definitely in support of the office. You know, we're mentioning micro school, but it's not about the micro school. It's about establishing the office that's going to organize us moving forward to have a micro school. And so this is about making sure we set up the structure so that we can move forward and with a micro school. And so I'm in support of it. We have a lot of kids that's at risk, and we need to do everything we can to make sure we serve those kids. So we've had a very positive pilot. We've learned from it, and we need to move forward. So I'm in support of it, and it sounds like everyone else is too. So.
That's good.
2 more in our motions on these.
Okay.
Number 1, special education, that prior to the October operations work group, the Board of Education be provided a report with that covers IDEA flow-through reserves, unallocated Fund 27 positions, and comparative school staffing compared to 2017-18 in cross-categorical and SEAs.
Second.
And the idea is that, you know, as I said, the frustration is that we have this money that's not being spent, and the purpose of this motion is that by the October operations work group, we have a report of what's been spent between now and then. And in time to, if we want to try again in the October budget, we're not doing it at the last minute, that we have some kind of information, because the charts here and here aren't updated since April. And if you do the calculations based on different pieces of the budget from April, I haven't done it with this one, you get different numbers. And that's understandable, they're different slices in time. But I would like the slice in time as of October, whatever week that is, the October operations work group, before we pass the final budget. So that's the purpose.
TJ, would you do me the favor of just repeating the motion?
What's that?
Would you just repeat the motion for me? Yeah.
Prior to the October operations work group, the Board of Education be provided with information about Fund 27 current unallocated positions, current school-based staffing for SEAs and cross-categorical teachers, and current IDEA flow-through reserves. That the school-based staffing be done in comparison to current year. So what's been allocated by October?
I I think that's doable.
3 pieces.
I needed to check that that was something we could actually pull off.
I think that's what I said the first time.
It is.
Close enough. It's close. So that's my motion.
Second.
And that's Kate's
It already
second.
was.
I already seconded it.
Jen, any comments on that?
No, understand, and I think it'll be in alignment with our discussion on special ed allocation anyway. So it'll be good background information to have.
Excellent. Okay, Ahmad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Last one, and this might die for lack of a second. We move $3 million from Fund 41 levy, add $3 million to Fund 10 levy, reduce the safety plan by $3 million.
Can you
I'd like to hear a discussion, so therefore I will second
Needs to be a
it.
second.
I will second it because I would like to hear the discussion.
My rationale is that I think we have, this would be spending $4 million on safety improvements, $3 million, actually, it would be, $3 million on safety improvements, $1 million in state money, and $2 million of local money. In addition to the entrance changes we've done in the last 3-4 years, I think that there are some real and effective changes we can make to improve the safety of our students, but I think when you get past a certain point, we're creating the illusion of safety, and it's a very, very expensive illusion to create. I think that the kind of events we are supposedly protecting students against are vanishingly rare. I think that, and as we, a determined school shooter is going to, if we harden the building, they will, if we harden the classrooms, they will do it in the hallways. If we harden the building, they will do it when students are moving in and out of the building. And additionally, when we look at the interior doors, many of these doors are glass. That I just don't think, I don't think this is a smart use of the taxpayers' money. I don't find it fiscally responsible to be spending this money for, again, questionable protections against vanishingly rare events. So that's my position.
I think Dean was first.
Yeah, I have been thinking about this a lot, and it seems at the same time we are attempting to try to be proactive and a little bit reactive, and maybe even a little knee-jerk. So at the same time, we seem to be all of that, and I don't quite have the answer. I think the grant that the state put out, along with the other reporting requirements and things, was all of that. And we've got some of the money to try to do things that our data shows do make a difference in things actually happening. So we can buy some locks and put some stuff on the windows and get some cameras. I am not certain how much we also need to put in of our own to make this, make it reasonable to me. I can't quite yet get my head around it. So I don't know if that's the right thing to do or not either. And so it's really difficult for me to wrap my head around this right now. I'd like to hear some more conversation.
My issues are, one, I want our students safe, please don't get me wrong. But here's my problems. One, we're talking about Alice training and the run and hide method. How do you hide a wheelchair? How do you run when you can't walk? We've done nothing on the planning, nor has there been much planning on special education or for our most vulnerable students. I think that's a major flaw. I don't want to include money until I know this is going to be included. Two, my problem is that we say this system will notify when any door is open and that an officer or an individual will come and fix it. We have a behavior education plan where teachers pick up the phone and no one answers. How do I know that they're going to answer this? I don't. I want our students to be safe, but I don't want the illusion to be safe and then end up with the tragedy because of that. So that's why I would agree with this motion.
Gloria.
So I understand the balance, right, of our taxpayers' money. I get that, and I get that it's rare, but as a mother of children in our schools, right, and given what's happened, I think it is our responsibility. I mean, we have old facilities that have not been updated for security measures. And we have to do whatever we can to protect our children. And I don't think that it is a delusion of ensuring that we are keeping up with our equipment, our locks, doing whatever we can to implement precautions in our schools in whatever capacity we have. We are no longer living in a country, right, where it was before. I mean, we are seeing threats to our children across this country. And as a mother of children in our schools, I just can't see not putting our best foot forward and figuring out how do we do this while balancing, our taxpayers. I mean, I think we have parents with children in our schools who are taxpayers who are concerned about their children in our schools. And we have to consider that as well. It's about time that we take security measures seriously, and to think that we are living in the country that this will not happen, and this will not happen to Madison, I'm not willing to accept that. And so I think it's important that we do move forward on investing in security measures in our schools.
James, could you go over the math again?
Can I?
So,
it's a reduction of $3 million, which would leave $3 million in funding.
Okay, the total investment for safety was $6 million?
That's right, $6 million, $1 million of which is paid for by a grant.
Yeah, and so you're basically talking about reducing it by $3 million, and that $3 million will go.
I would leave that to our staff.
And these were staff recommendations.
Go back to fund balance, because that's where it's coming from.
So I have a couple of questions about the math, and then a couple of questions about feedback. If we were to shift stuff out of Fund 41, that then would impact equalization aid going into next year, correct? Or is that?
Not so much this
because
this is money not spent.
Kate, could you speak into your microphone?
What I heard was taking it out of Fund 41 and into Fund 10. Yes? That was
Could
what
you
you were
speak into your
proposing?
mic, please? Thank you.
What I heard.
That's the motion I made.
TJ made a motion.
The other proposal would be simply to reduce tax and use fund balance. So, I mean.
So TJ's motion was to take money out of Fund 41 and put it into Fund 10, which would add money to our general operating budget and impact equalization aid going forward.
That is true. Would also
loosely take. So that was my question: was does Fund 41 impact equalization aid in the same way?
It does not. And if we're going to spend dollars on safety and security, I think we'd be better off spending them in Fund 41 than in Fund 10, just purely for financial impact reasons.
Because of the 50 cents on the dollar loss that we would expect if we were to move that money into Fund 10.
That's right.
Okay. So that was the first question. I think the second question, just in terms of what feedback has been received from staff, et cetera, in terms of the mix of type of equipment and hardware. Can you just talk a little bit about how, what has been the feedback from the folks in the buildings in terms of what kind of hardware?
I don't have anything new to add since the operations work group that we just held a couple of weeks ago. I think this question and others came up there. The plan that we've devised is informed by the feedback that we have heard so far. And where we left that meeting was to create this not to exceed amount, which doesn't mean we spend all $6 million. It's just a placeholder so that as that plan further develops, as we're engaging more with staff experts in this area, et cetera, that we would solidify the plan over time. So I just want to remind the board that's where we landed. The plan is still a work in progress. And as that plan gets solidified, we'll continue to engage the board. You will continue to vote on those expenditures through the consent agenda, and hold us accountable for making sure that we're not overreacting, that we're not making investments where we shouldn't be. But we wanted to keep a healthy fund balance available, depending on what we together choose to implement over the course of this next year.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, Gloria, I agree with you. I think we need to keep this in the budget. I think I am very curious to continue to see and vote on the plan as it unfolds, because I do think our facilities have lots of needs, and there are lots of ways to keep our children safe, and we need to be creative and willing to invest to upgrade our facilities where we can. So I would like to keep this in here. I don't know if the final solution is going to be every kind of one kind of lock or another, or more cameras or something else that we haven't even surfaced yet. For me, hearing from staff and from students as a part of that process as we invest, this is a major investment. It's not the kind of thing we're going to do every year. I would like to get it right, and I would like to incorporate feedback from all of the various stakeholders in our community as a part of how we do that. So those would be some of the things I'd like to see going forward, but I think this is the right thing to do at this point in time. So.
Okay, Ahmad and then James.
I think as a student, I've talked to a lot of my friends, and just with such a high percentage of students not feeling safe in the schools, and so many improvements needing to be made, whether it be the electronic system or the new locks, I think that improvements would hopefully draw the students' attention away from, feeling like their classroom is in danger, which can often be distracting from their education or class time. Hopefully that would, lead them to feel more safe and kind of push them towards a higher focus on education, which is important.
Thank you. James and then Nikki.
Some of the comments we've heard that's come in has been around some of the very high-priced items. Could you comment on, are these high-priced items a matter of choice? I mean, do we have a choice in it, or is it just a lack of options? I mean, how do you get at this question that people are asking about the high-priced options that we're choosing? Are there options? I mean, are there a lack of options? Right. I mean, what are some of the choices we're making seem to have a pretty good price tag?
Right. First of all, I think I appreciate you acknowledge that. There are many ways to approach these solutions. But the basic solutions we're looking for were up-to-date video, the external door monitors, and making sure that every classroom has an interior locking door. Those are the three elements. Within that, though, there are options. And I think that's why we went with a not-to-exceed approach. I think that our own team is still working on exactly how to write the bid specifications and what the add or deduct alternates might be. So we acknowledge that there are options. As you said, there are options. Ultimately, we've not landed on anything specific yet. There's a lot of discussion at operations about a preferred option. But, we need to see, how does that actually bid out?
And we talked about bidding it out in multiple ways to see what comes back.
And not unlike a construction bid, where you bid add and deduct alternates, and then once you've got hard information, you can make your decisions. So I wish I could tell you that there is absolute single choice, no debate, one way to do it. There's not. It's something that we're going to have to learn through design and through bidding.
Yeah, and one of the things we're hearing is people always talk about, staff talks about it, board members, the public talk about, make sure we get input from stakeholders, for example. We talk about teachers and staff and all of that. But when it comes to safety, and I agree with that, we want to always get input. But when it comes to safety, it seems as though that you need expert opinions. I don't know what a student is going to say other than, you know, maybe a lock would make me feel safe, or my environment or something would be improved. But I don't know how a teacher's not an expert on school safety. My staff are not experts on school safety. You need to talk to people who are experts on delivering safety to schools, it seems to me. So I'm all for getting as much input as possible, but I would value expert opinions around safety. When safety items are put in place, normally those are people who've done this work for many years and know how to improve safety in buildings and all. It's not, all I can do is feel safe or have this thought or illusion of being safe based on what is being put on or added to the building in terms of safety issues. So I'm all for input. I'm always for input. I think most of the time we talk about getting as much input as possible. But when it comes to safety, I'm not sure. I think the people we want to hear from are those that are experts in this area that know how to make our buildings safe.
Okay, so Jen, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Yeah, I just wanted to, thank you, Mary.
Nikki, you'll get one final comment.
I just wanted to James's point on expert opinion, in addition to getting voices from staff and students and families, who often express this concern of not wanting to create you know, like schools that feel like prisons, right? I mean, they really are asking us to strike the balance. At least that's what I hear. We are going to continue to do those safety assessments. We did all of the comprehensive high schools, and part of our plan as presented to the board a couple of weeks ago was to continue doing a complete safety assessment on every school, since every school has its really individual needs. So that's really where that expert opinion will come in, James.
Okay, Nikki?
One, and this might be a Mike question, this might be a Jen question, is can we find out what emergency plans are in place for individuals with disabilities, primarily wheelchair bound? Two, on the issue of experts. We have, to me, an expert is someone who's an expert and knowledgeable of their field. It also means someone who is dealing with the situation day after day. I think our teachers can qualify being that they lived it. Three, what I worry about is someone who doesn't know the ins and outs of the school. This happened in New York, where a wheelchair-bound student was left for 3.5 hours during a fire drill because they didn't put in the plan on how to get her out. I don't want that happening here.
Nikki, you mentioned that at the operations work group meeting. I remember Karen Kepler saying that she was going to make sure to incorporate that into her work around safety plans. We've got it. We're on it. Thank you.
Just that, what to me was probably the most terrifying story I've ever read, of leaving someone.
For sure, I appreciate that.
Okay, TJ?
Just really, I want to note in response to Gloria that I also have children in schools, or a child at this point, and I am not insensitive to that. And in response to Kate's question about Fund 41 and future equalization aid, I think it is almost certain that either 2020-21 or maybe even 2019-20, that regardless of what we do with this, our district will take the 15% maximum cut, and that is almost certain. And so that I think that the between the Fund 10 and 41 actually becomes irrelevant. So that's it.
Okay, so we have an amendment on the table. We have a second, Ahmad, your advisory vote. This is the amendment to reduce the funding for the safety.
I'll abstain.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay. That fails 2-5. Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. I'm done. Okay, so then we are going on to the tax levy motion. And I move that the board approve the preliminary tax. Oh, thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Then we are back to, thank you, the budget, the preliminary budget. We have a motion and a second. Ahmad, this is the vote for the preliminary budget. Your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay. I move that the board approve the preliminary tax levies by fund with the said levy approvals being 1, for the purpose of enabling short-term borrowing by the district during the 2018-19 fiscal year, and 2, subject to modifications by the board prior to November 1, 2018, in conjunction with certifying the final levy amounts based upon the then current status of the 2018-19 school district budget, considering such alterations and amendments as may be made prior to the levy certification. Fund 10, General Fund, $276,570,540. Fund 38, Non-Referendum Debt Service, $4,376,041. Fund 39, Referendum Approved Debt Service, $8,303,725. Fund 41, Capital Expansion Fund, $10 million. Fund 80, Community Services Fund, $11,535,312. Total tax levy, $310,785,618.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0.
Mike, thank
See you
you
next
so
week.
much. Congratulations.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike.
Good job, team.
Thanks to everybody who applauded. Thanks to the board, Jen, and it sure has been a pleasure. Thank you.
Okay, feels like that should end the meeting, but I guess we're only, we're going to start motoring through
You're
now.
the chair, tap that quick.
Okay, we are going, next item on the agenda is the report on items that proceeded through the instruction work group held June 4th, 2018.
I'm not quite sure how to do this since these are now action items elsewhere in the agenda. So
Like a summary.
What's that? I guess that I will just say that we had discussions of the element of 3 partnerships, one of which was a renewal, 2 of which were amendments. The Elementary Schools of Hope partnership agreement that that our main partner in that is now United Way. Amendment to behavioral health in schools to bring in a new partner, and a renewal with some significant changes to the People program. And we will be voting on all 3 of those in a matter of minutes. The next scheduled meeting for the instruction work group is July 9th, and we will be discussing the at-risk plan update, the micro school update, as well as middle school start time update, I assume. So that's it.
Thanks, teacher. And the next item is the report on items that proceeded through the operations work group held June 11, 2018. So I will report on that. 3 items that we had: the budget review and update, which we just covered in great depth. The safety plan update, which was also covered in a budget discussion. And the Fitchburg tax incremental TID number 12 creation. And so we will be moving ahead and voting on those actually in just a few moments. So any discussion around those we'll have with the vote. And our next meeting is July 16th. The agenda is long-range facilities plan update, building use policy, and the youth apprenticeship partnership agreement. Okay. And so now we will go to the action items that proceeded through the instruction work group. First is the amendment to the Elementary Schools of Hope Partnership Memorandum Agreement. So I move that the Board of Education approve the Memorandum of Agreement and amendment for the Schools of Hope AmeriCorps Project Elementary Partnership as set forth in the documents prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. The next is the behavioral health And I move that the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement and amendment for the Behavioral Health in Schools Partnership as set forth in the documents prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. The next is the People Program, and I move that the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement for the Pre-College Enrichment Opportunity Program for Learning Excellence, otherwise known as People, program partnership as set forth in the documents prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular meeting.
Second.
I have a question.
Discussion, yeah.
Okay. Did we, when we talked about this, we talked about our undocumented students? Is that in there?
It is.
Okay.
And along the same lines, just that I would like to thank both our partner UW and Jessica Hankey for her work to make this happen under, I know that it had been on the radar for a while, but I have the feeling that the last couple of months that there was some pretty intense work to make it, to make this program available for our undocumented students. And so I would like to express appreciation for all who worked on that.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Ahmad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. We move on to the action items that proceeded through the operations work group, and the first one on that is the board policy 4147. I
have a question on that when you're done.
That'll be under discussion.
Yeah. I move that the Board of Education approve the revisions to Board Policy 4147, Students/Employees Safety, as set forth in the documents prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular meeting, with said revisions to take effect immediately.
Second, and I have an amendment.
Okay, second. So first, Nikki, discussion?
Discussion on both that and on 9.2, if board members, if we ever change that for board members being an employee or not.
That's the next policy, where we do directly address whether board members would be employees for the purposes of the policy. So.
Beautiful.
Okay.
So I wanted to make a very slight amendment on the third page under section 2 in the 2A. The discussion is about the school safety teams, and the language right now reads that the school safety teams can only be made up of an administrator and appointed staff. I'd like to add that should the administrator want to appoint either community members or students, that would be a possibility. Some of, again, the kind of best practice research out there on risk assessment teams would indicate that a more diverse team, including custodial staff, et cetera, is a wise thing. And I certainly think that if schools want to do that, that they should be able to. And then just literally add a sentence saying that the team shall meet regularly, because right now it just has to exist. And I would like to put in policy that we expect them to be meeting regularly. They can decide the cadence, but. So the specific language that I had was each individualized plan for a school building or facility shall identify a school safety team. This is all in the writing already, made up of the administrator of the building or facility and other staff members, community members and or students as designated by the administrator, period. The school safety team shall meet regularly. So.
Second.
Okay, so voting on the amendment, Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Amendment passes 7-0. Is there any other discussion? Okay, so now voting on the actual policy. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, now we are on to new board policy regarding mandatory reporting. I move that the Board of Education approve the creation of a new board policy, number 2 be assigned, addressing the mandatory requirement to report a threat made by an individual seen in the course of professional duties regarding violence in or targeted at a school as set forth in the documents prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular meeting, with said revisions to take effect immediately.
Discussion.
I'm going to second. Yeah.
My previous question, are board members exempt?
So the school teacher, school administrator, school counselor, school employee isn't defined in the statute. To make it clear, I have added a section. It's on the very first page of the new policy. It's number 2, where school board members would be subject to the policy. And I was trying to think of a situation in which this might apply. And the situation I thought of is if a school board member is doing a school visit, and they're sitting down with students at the lunchroom, and they're talking with students about the climate, et cetera, and a student makes a threat, or there's a threat overheard. In that situation, that could be a potential mandatory report. So that's the scenario I thought of. Other than that, it wouldn't be in your professional roles
That's
as
what I'm
board
worried
members.
about.
It would be as your professional roles as board members. I wouldn't envision a lot of interaction with students, so there wouldn't be a ton of interaction where in your professional role you'd be interacting with students, but that's one scenario I thought of that I think could realistically happen.
My problem is that work with juveniles on a daily basis as an attorney. I deal with my share of school threats, etc. I can't break attorney-client privilege, but if I'm a mandated reporter, because defense attorneys cannot be mandated reporters, which trumps what?
So in your role as attorney for the student, you would not be acting in your role as a professional board member. So I don't believe that their mandatory reporting would kick in because you would not be seeing that student in your professional role as a board member. And that's specifically how I have.
I appreciate that.
Okay, Dean?
Yeah, this reminded me of something that I wanted to ask, and this seems to be perfect time. Just a couple days ago in the paper, there was an article about city council members being given bills to make up for their copay for their retirement fund. In the article, it stated that any elected officials, if they work more than 20 hours a week, are considered employees, and they're eligible for these types of benefits. So some city council people were given bills of several $1,000s to make up for their contribution, which, reading that clause in there, it said elected officials, which we are. Can someone find out if that stuff applies to us as well, or do you already know? Because that changes the answer you gave to Nikki.
I just want to make clear that the statute doesn't specifically call out school board members in the statute. It calls out school employee. And there's some discussion about whether board members are employees. So I wanted to make it clear that for the purposes of this statute, the board will be considered a school employee. I'm not going to be sending any bills, but I don't know. I'll have to follow up with you on that question. I just don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, well, thanks.
Teacher?
We're awaiting DPI guidance on this statute, and I guess I would like to request that when DPI guidance comes out, that that Matt doesn't hesitate to bring forth any changes to this policy outside of the normal policy cycle, especially those that will protect our students without, in our opinion, decreasing safety. And especially concerned with threats made by, in the context of students with disabilities, but other ones also that as this is defined. So I just request that when the guidance comes out, if you see some ways we can work more things in along those lines, please do not hesitate.
And I'd just like to add there, DPI's estimate of timeline is August 15th for their training. As soon as I get a hold of that, I will advise the board of that training.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think Gloria had a question.
Yeah, that was the same lines where, I'm sure other school boards are dealing with this in the state, and I'm sure that's come up. So getting guidance from DPI and then also what other school boards are doing.
Okay, so Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, and the last vote on the operations work group items is with regards to the Fitchburg TID. I move that the Board of Education direct the Board of Education representative to the Joint Tax Incremental Finance Board to vote in support of the project plan for the creation of Tax Incremental District Number 12, an overlay of TID 4 for Promega Research and Development R&D expansion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. Okay, so we are moving on to consent agenda. And let's see. Okay, I'm having a little. Okay. We're going to have the main motion and then see if there's any separation. So I move that the Board of Education adopt and approve all the motions set forth in Section 10 of the electronic agenda prepared for the June 25th, 2018 regular school board meeting exactly as said motions are written. By voting affirmatively on this motion, a board member expresses his or her affirmative vote on each of the motions consolidated hereby, subject to any express separations that have been made by any member of the school board.
Second.
Okay, discussion.
Separate 10.12, 10.12.
Okay, 10.12, Gloria?
Separate 10.35.
35.
10.11 and 10.39.
Okay, and I will separate 10.8. Okay. Then we will go ahead with the main motion. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, main motion passes with the express separations. So the first one is 10.8, which is the Avid contract for services. I would like to recuse myself from that vote.
It's 10.10.
It's 10.
10.8 on my electronic agenda.
Oh, I'm looking at the paper one and it says Emerson Playground.
Okay, well, we're on the electronic agenda. That's what the motion said. So we'll just make sure when I read out the numbers.
The one that you pulled out.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure it's the right.
Okay, you know what, we're going to go through and make sure that what people gave me is the correct ones. 10.8 is Avid. 10.11 is Cogat Screener. Who did 10.11?
I did 10.11.
And was it meant to be the Cogat?
That was what it was meant to be.
Okay, great. Okay, 10.12 is ANET.
Yep.
Okay.
That was what I meant.
10.35 is
Meadowood.
Meadowood. Is that what we wanted to?
Yes.
Okay, and 10.39.
HR report.
Okay, so we got them all correct? Okay, so then we'll go back to 10.8, Avid contract for services. Actually, I'm not going to make the motion.
You want me to make it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I move that the Board of Education approve entering into the advancement via individual determination Avid implementation agreement for the 2018-19 school year at a total cost of $61,635 with funding from the 2018-19 Avid operating budget. Is there a second?
Second.
And I think James should call the votes as Vice President.
I'll let your advisory vote, please.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carries 7-0.
601.
601.
Okay, next one is ANET.
Or
No, Cogat.
Oh, I'm sorry. Cogat, thank you.
I do this at least once a year, sometimes twice it seems like, and I will keep it short, is that I do not believe that Cogat is the best way to screen our students for advanced learning programs. I believe that it contains too many biases. I think that nonverbal screeners would be much, much better. And I appreciate the opportunity to pull it and vote against it.
Okay. Jen, any comments on that?
No, TJ and I understand one another on this.
Okay. I mean, my understanding from previous years is that while imperfect, it's the best one that we have that is a, and therefore I will be supporting it, but I would encourage us to continue to look at better and better screeners. Okay. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 5-2. Okay, now 10-12, ANET.
Yes. Having read the Harvard study, having also read the memo that the administration sent the board, I've always been leery of coaching and support, especially, and I would like it done on a local basis, one. Number two, I'd like it to be more narrowly tailored. Because of those things, and because I don't believe it has that much effect on students' abilities, I would be voting against it. But I would like to hear what others think.
Jen, I would like to, because I'd like to hear more about that. I thank TJ actually for sharing the study, and I read that, so I have some of the same concerns that other board members have.
Yeah, I'll say a little bit about our proposed work with Achievement Network. The study that TJ referenced, an I3 grant, large grant that they received, it was a study that was done in a couple of phases over multiple years. They wanted to do it to better understand the effectiveness of their own practice. If you read that study, which we discussed with them at length before even entering into any thought about partnership, it's an interesting study because it describes where their work has positive effect and where it doesn't. And their work is all about formative assessment use in the classroom. And this is really, in large part, in response for us to our overemphasis on the big summative standardized assessments and wanting to learn ourselves from a systems perspective and then begin over time to work with schools who have a high level of readiness to dive into formative assessment to help us learn how to leverage formative assessment in the classroom, which we know is powerful. So that's why we want to do the work with ANET. We think the study was very informative about where they can and do have a positive effect in schools that have a high level of readiness. And what we mean by that are schools that already have good, strong teacher teaming practices, that have a common curriculum in place, schools that don't have some of these fundamentals in place. Formative assessment work with them actually, in some instances, according to the study, has a negative impact, not even just not an impact, but a negative one. So we're completely cognizant of what this partnership should be about and how we would want to leverage this organization. The last thing I was going to say is that our proposed work for this year is actually fairly narrow in scope. We're working with them, with our school improvement partners, the chiefs, to learn about how we can already leverage what's happening in our district around formative assessments, with an eye towards beginning to work with a small set of schools in the following year, the 1920 school year. And that would only be schools invited based on their demonstrated level of readiness, and they would be opting in. We think it's really important in alignment with our framework, which is all about empowering schools to make decisions, that we're not forcing any schools into working with any organization for that matter, but inviting them into the partnership if they want. And if we don't have enough schools that have a high level of readiness and who want to do it, Well, I mean, that'll be a decision for another day. We likely wouldn't move forward with our work with Achievement Network after this upcoming year. Bottom line, we're really excited about it. We've done our homework on this organization, and we hope we'll get your support in moving ahead.
Dean?
How many schools do you anticipate?
None for the upcoming year. They'll be only working on building capacity with the central office team that works across all schools, but probably if we move forward the year after, around 10, a dozen, something like that. That would be in 1920, and that's not what this proposal is about at this point.
Teacher?
I think 2 or 3 things. They did find a subset of schools with high readiness that showed positive results, statistically positive results. They also showed, to be fair, that the staff that they worked with all had positive things. But in terms of student results, I can't help but interpret this as being the overall picture is one of minimal to negative effects, with the exception of one subset of schools defined in a not very rigorous way, which is ready schools. And I think that one of the things that you see in research lately, and I don't want to go into a long speech about this, is that we have studies that tout results where successfully implemented and throw out the schools where it wasn't successfully implemented. And you're seeing that increasingly. And these are very subjective measures, but I'm going to leave that aside. I think number 2 is the $50,000 kind of surprise. I was like, what's ANAC going to do for $50,000? And understanding that this explanation that this is an initial beginning of a partnership makes sense. And again, $50,000 is not a lot of money, as we know from the budget we've done tonight. But I also think that as we look at a longer-term partnership, which would be substantially more expensive, and the $50,000 actually, the money is one issue, but it's the investment of our teacher time that concerns, and our school improvement partner time. That I want to be really, really confident if we are going to be having a new set of tools designed to improve student achievement, that these are being targeted in the places where they're needed most, and that they have a high likelihood of success. I don't think our schools that we define as ready is where the most help is needed in our district. And my reading of the research is that there isn't a high likelihood of success. So I will be voting no. That's my read of the research, and I think that it's better to, I will be voting no. Leave it at that.
TJ, I think you bring up really good points. This, to me, though, is an example of innovation. Yes, it has risk to it. We don't know how it's going to be. A lot counts on implementation of it. But I also believe that we've got to move forward. And if we find tools that are going to be really, are going to support our staff and our principals and our schools to identifying how we can better reach students, I think we have to do those in pilots. And that was my first email to Jen. As I looked through the materials, I didn't see that this was a pilot. And I feel really strongly that as we undertake these things, we have to be looking not only at the financial cost, but the teacher time that goes into it, so that the work starts and trains and works with our staff here. I would personally be probably looking at a smaller group of schools than 10. But make it successful. So I think we're going to find out almost all of these proposals that come are always going to have a history of succeeding some places and succeeding and not succeeding other places. Unfortunately, that's education. There's very few things out there that have proven to be successful everywhere. That's the difficult work that we're doing. But I don't want to, not for this amount of money, tie our staff's hands if they've identified something that they think that we are ready for. So that would be my take on this is invest it, watch it really closely, make sure we're not taking that next step unless we feel really certain that the probability is increasing the more that we know and the more that we see, but use it as a tool that could bring some additional support.
And as a reminder, it is TID money, one-time funds, which was done intentionally to support this work.
Okay, Kate?
Maybe just a quick comment. TJ, I appreciate your comments tonight, and I think you've changed my opinion on this, actually. I mean, the investment of time to me here is my first filter is all about our strategic framework goals and metrics, and it's hard for me to see how this is kind of directionally the highest priority thing or one of the highest priority things that we could do to hit one of those three goals around kind of student achievement, culture and climate, and African American student achievement. And so, and I am very curious to think about kind of shifting our whole overall assessment structure and exploring more formative assessments. I'd love to do that as part of a whole plan where we're taking things away and adding things, not adding things first and then talking about taking things away later. I think there's certainly a need to evolve how we're thinking about assessment, but it's, given the layering effect, I think it might be better done altogether. So.
Okay, we're going to wrap this up soon. Any final comments? No?
I can't resist, but just to make sure the board understands this is not one of the major investments, obviously, in our budget.
It's a time.
But, and I understand the time issue, but formative assessment use is has a very strong support in the research. The work that that we are discussing with ANET is not about simply layering on more assessments. It's actually about figuring out how to streamline our assessment system so that it can be more balanced. That is one of the priority areas that we've defined in this strategic framework that we'll talk about on Friday. So I believe it is tightly aligned to our future direction. Not to be argumentative, I just think it's so spot on, and actually we're going to get a lot out of this for actually a fairly small investment with schools that I hope will be really excited about doing the work with us in the future.
Okay.
More to come.
Just a quick note, and not directly on this, but I do want to note that our teachers, both at the individual level, at the team level, and even some extent at the district level, are using formative assessments. And I just don't want, I don't want to create the impression that formative assessments are not part of what's going on in the district. So, no.
Okay, I don't think we actually ever made this motion. We just went directly into it. So I'm going to, am I clear on that? I don't remember the. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then I will move that the Board of Education approve an expenditure in the amount of $50,000 to the Achievement Network, ANET, to support teacher team development and assessment design for the 2018-19 school year from the 2018-19 Teaching and Learning Department operating budget via TID 25.
Second.
Imad, your advisor vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 4-3. Okay, next is the Meadowwoods, number 1035.
So I just pulled this out. I need to recuse myself due to my appointment with the city.
Okay. So I will move that the Board of Education approve renewing the purchase of services agreement with the City of Madison, whereby the city will fund MSCR operation of the Meadowwood Neighborhood Center programs in the amount of $33,928.
Second.
Imad, your advisor vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That passes 601. Okay, and the final item on the consent for separations is a Human Resources Transaction Report. TJ?
Yeah, I have a question about the meaning of items 127 through 150, 152 through 174, and 176 through 195. I've never seen anything like it on a Human Resources report before.
You know, I can't answer that question, TJ. Okay. Is there anyone from HR who is in the audience who might be able to help us? Thank you, Deirdre.
TJ, could you give the numbers again?
127 through 150, 152 through 174, and 176 through 195.
Okay.
Deirdre, I'll show you the report so you know. I got it. And what, I'm sorry, TJ, what are the lines again?
It's the two categories. There's a couple ones that in there that I do understand, which is why I have those ones, is approval of acceptance letters for 1-year contracts and approval for acceptance letters for 2-year contracts with administrators. And this has never appeared on a board agenda before. And so I'm curious about why.
No, these are approval of the admin contracts, and they appear every year.
No, the offering the contracts appears in January every year. The acceptance of the contracts does not appear in June. If we were to vote no, would this have any impact on anything?
No.
So this is a meaningless vote. When it appears on a January agenda, does that vote have meaning?
No,
Excuse me?
it does not. The non-renewal process, the statutory requirement says that we have to give people 4 months prior notice. If folks are not coming forward for non-renewal, we share that information with you via closed session so that you have knowledge of that. If we don't bring this forward, those folks have contracts. It's just like the teacher contract process. It's exactly the same.
I have a very, very different understanding of what normally appears on the January, which is that if I were to pull one of the issuing of letters on the January one, and a majority of the vote voted against that, then that would result in the issuance of a preliminary letter of non-renewal. Then the board at no time has any choice about whether we renew or non-renew? Is that what you're telling me?
The non-renewal process.
That this is not a board power?
Through closed session, it is notification, and if it doesn't happen and we don't have folks that go through non-renewal, it is exactly like the teacher process.
We're not allowed to take those votes in a closed session. They have to take place in a public context.
They do it right after the closed session. This is our typical process.
So again, if this were to be pulled from if this would be pulled from a January where it normally appears, if there is a item on a January agenda that says that offering a letter of renewal, and the board voted against that.
TJ, we've had contracts that have come to the board. The 1-year contracts have come in January. The 2-year contract approvals have come in May. So we've done it 2 different ways. Last year, they all came to you in January. This year, they came later. With the discussion that we've had on our team, it has been our decision to change the process so that all of the contracts come in January. But the reality of it is, half of the contracts you haven't seen until the month of May, and you've approved those on previous HR transaction reports. So the only contracts that you've seen that have come forward to you are the ones that are in January.
I think that as a board,
as 1-year contracts.
I think as a board.
So TJ, can we?
I'm just going to say
yeah.
that I just want to summon this. The last thing I'm going to say is,
yeah.
I think as a board that we need to be clear that offers of contracts and renewals of contracts require our approval in a time when it has meaning, because it doesn't have any meaning tonight. It could have had meaning in January. And I think that going forward, when we look at our hiring processes and our renewal processes and our evaluation processes, because I'm seeing here 2 or 3 people getting contracts here who are no longer even in the positions that is on this agenda. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, TJ, it's a
no, I'll leave it at that.
Point.
No, I'm leaving it at that. That's
okay.
it. That's it.
Great. Then, Ahmad, we're going to make the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the June 2018 Human Resources Transaction Report, items 1 through 249.
Second.
Okay, Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
Sorry.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, passes 5-2. Okay, we got through consent.
Deirdre, thank you for your explanation. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Deirdre. So there are no other items of business proposed to be considered under Section 10. Oh, we already did that, the separations. Okay, other reports to the board. City of Madison Education Committee.
Yes, City of Madison Education Committee met, discussed the office, we briefly discussed the Office of Youth, of the Office of Youth Engagement, and also whether or not the city committee would fund it if the school board did not, and that's pretty much where we left it.
Okay.
But James was also there, so if he wishes to add anything to it.
No, I think that covers it very well.
Thank you. Next is Student Senate. Ahmad?
Student Senate had our last official meeting for the school year in the beginning of June, and we mainly spent that time reviewing our yearly goals and progress with regards to advanced learning, as well as brainstorming meeting schedules for next year.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Then the Dean, the ERO Ad Hoc Committee?
Yeah, we had a meeting last week, and we were able to look through some proposals. We got to the point where we'll have one more meeting. That work group was set up to draft a proposal to give to the group that we'll be able to vote on and turn over to the board.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So then with other business, we do have a number of action items. And the first being, let's see, I will just read this as such. Whereas the Verona Area School District and the Middleton Cross Plains Area School District have established 4K programs to serve age-eligible students, and whereas the Verona and Middleton Cross Plains Area School Districts recognize the potential educational benefits of providing families with options for 4-year-old programs, 4K, as authorized by the Department of Public Instruction to meet the needs of students eligible to participate in 4K programs. It is hereby resolved that pursuant to Section 66.0301 of the Wisconsin statutes, the school boards of the Middleton Cross Plains School District and the Verona Area School District agree to establish and maintain on a cooperative basis 4K programs as set forth in the agreements prepared for the June 5th regular meeting.
Second.
Okay. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, the next item is with regard to the Ad Hoc Committee on School Discipline. And prior to reading the motion, I just want to address some of the comments that were made by some of our speakers. And this is an ad hoc committee of the board, and so it is proposed to be 3 board members. But input and the voice of stakeholders is incredibly important. And whether we're talking about our staff, students, our partners like the Guiding Coalition, all of those will be incredibly important to making sure that that this committee comes forth to the board with recommendations that address the issues that we have in our schools around discipline. This is really important work, and we have a very short time schedule. We're at the end of June, we're going into July. If we want to have successful implementation, and we want to give our staff and our administration adequate time to develop plans and implement this for the 1920 school year, along with including in the budget recommendations to put resources behind this, we need to make sure that we move relatively quickly. So, that's just a little bit more context around this. Jen, would you like to make any comments?
I would just add that we're excited about the creation of the committee. We think it's important. We think it's timely. We think it'll make our work stronger in this area. There was some confusion about the staff members that would be associated with the board ad hoc committee. I sent out a message clarifying that, but just in case you didn't see that message, I'd like to clarify it in person. Typically, and the board has the power to formulate ad hoc committees in different ways, so I'm not sure if the word typical has any real meaning, but I'll use it. Typically, an ad hoc committee of the board, at least in my time, has consisted of several board members, and that the staff members aren't members of the committee, but they're there to staff it in support of the board members who are on the committee. We haven't determined yet who will comprise the staff members assigned to support the board. Quinn Craw, for sure, will be probably the consistent person assigned by me to staff the committee starting in July, and I would look to the ad hoc committee itself, the 3 board members, to provide some insight into what kind of support you'll need, what kind of expertise you'll need, and what kind of input you'll want to solidify from stakeholders to help guide your work over the course of the committee. The last thing I'll say is we mentioned the ERS study a little earlier in this meeting as it relates to special ed. As a reminder, they're going to be providing us some information that will fuel decision-making around resource allocation related to behavior and behavior support. So that information I think will be really helpful for the committee as well.
Okay. Nikki, given the late hour here, I'm going to actually make the motion and then open it for discussion.
That's fine.
Is it? Okay. That's fine. I move that the Board of Education create an ad hoc committee called the Ad Hoc Committee on School Discipline, which shall be charged with providing the full Board of Education with the revised policy for discipline and set of key implications for implementation. The ad hoc committee shall be comprised of 3 board members, period. It is further recommended, we'll do that as a separate motion. 2 motions, Matt, or with regards to the membership of the committee? Yeah, second.
Yes.
Okay. Nikki.
I feel that teachers should be sitting on the committee. They're the ones who, I understand that they can give input. My problem is that the BEP, in order for it to work the best, needs teachers on it directly to have a direct say. Secondly, education is a major issue. It's something we all have to take individually as our individual responsibility, and I think we're doing that. The problem is when we rush a committee and we force a committee and put as fast a timeline on it, you're not going to get the results that you wish to get. I think that, for example, we have ERS describing special ed staffing. And this, I don't want to sound self-serving, so I'm going to say that right now. I would rather have someone for the disability community, not necessarily myself, be on it so that they could say, hey, this is how I've dealt with it. I'm thinking a parent in the district. So that they could say, this is my experience. Because ERS's opinion is all well and good. There's still a company who isn't in our school on a daily basis.
Gloria?
So I just want to remind everyone that this is in response to hearing from many individuals, parents, teachers, staff, about the behavior challenges in our schools. I mean, this has happened for some time. I mean, we have heard. It's not to say that we're not going to continue to hear from, you know, our special education experts and others. But this is an effort to respond to a need that we have been hearing from our community. So I think its timing is everything. We feel a sense of urgency on this, so yeah.
James.
Only question I have is that we're trying to wrap this up in December, and typically we make these changes and we wrap them up going into the summer, so we use that time to implement, for example, so we can start a new school year. So can you comment on why this time frame and not?
That's a really good question, James. Yeah. A couple of things. And remember, those milestones that are on there are really meant to guide the committee. I mean, they'll flesh out exactly what that timeline needs to look like and what you forward to the rest of your colleagues when. That's my assumption. But I think a couple of those milestones are there for very specific reasons. The December milestone is there for the policy, like if there were any policy recommendations. And that is, I know we do policy work on the BEP in May, but if we were to make more substantial changes, and that's a big if, I mean, we've got to see what emerges from this group, but if they were more substantial, we've learned through unfortunate experience that waiting too late into the school year to make more substantial changes to the policy doesn't set us up for success in terms of preparing staff, students, and parents, right? The whole community for the changes that are coming up. So that's very intentional, giving us a full semester of preparation time heading into the next school year. That is based on experience. I see some heads shaking. That is something at least the team that's responsible for implementation is pretty adamant about. The second is related to budget, and as you know, April is when we submit the draft preliminary budget to the board. So having anything that would result in budget implications, we'd like to have that. I mean, it is March is like the very latest we should be getting it if we want it into the initial draft of the budget. So that's also really intentional. And I think the last thing I'll say on this, I mean, it's your committee, so you do with it as you want. But I mean, if you find that in March the committee needs to continue having discussions about practice, implementation, by all means, right? Extend the time, keep it going. There's certainly no harm in it, in my opinion. This is a good starting place, I would hope, for the committee.
Dean?
Yeah, well, we, on the board, we had heard reports and discussed having this committee set up last year for this year. And it's my understanding and my intention is that any ad hoc committee that we set up, there's 3 voting members, but when we originally set up the committee, ad hoc committee to devise the BEP, any board member could come and sit in, and if I don't recall us having meetings when there weren't all of us there. The committee only has 3 votes, and then it comes here. I fully intend to come to every single one of these meetings, so to continue my hearing information about how we can make this better. We just don't have this one right yet. It's clear enough that implementation of the BEP is not right yet. BEP, as one of our speakers said, is not wrong. We just don't have, we're not implementing it right. So those are very specific issues we need to address with the 4 years that we put in. So that's what I know, and that's what I intend. So you're going to see me at this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, this is climate is foundational to learning, and we know right now that the climate and behavior in some of our classrooms is disrupting learning. So I mean, I think we gotta get going, and we gotta kind of move with urgency. Our board policy on ad hocs allows us to, I mean, we have the power to appoint members, right? All 7 votes. So I can't imagine doing this work without input from staff and from students and community members. I have some names in mind already and so, you know, I can't imagine doing this work without input from groups. Exactly how that looks is our power to decide. So, but I would like to at least kick us off, and we're in the summer, and at least start the work. So, yeah.
Teacher.
First, a question for Kate. Are you talking about amending the makeup of this task force in the future?
We could. I mean, it's our power to do that, right? I think it's our power to do that. I would start now. And
I just wasn't aware of that as an option.
I would start now, given that it's the summertime, and if we learn that we need, for some reason, voting members, then we can always address that later. I don't, you know, that need isn't immediately obvious to me right now, but I would certainly not like to waste the next 2 months.
May I make an amendment?
You know, actually, some discussion is, TJ has the floor.
I agree that in this coming year that we need to have a committee on behavior or a committee on climate or whatever you want to call it. I'll tell you that I will not vote in favor of a committee on discipline. I think that sends the wrong message, and I think it moves us in a bad direction. Changes to climate, changes to behavior, something like that, and I will make a motion to do that later. But just I agree that we need that. My concern here is that not necessarily the makeup of the committee, though I would like to have representatives from at the table from different perspectives, including classroom perspectives and including perspectives of special education students or educators and things like that. But that's not my main concern. My main concern at this time is that the focus of this committee, as in the charge of the task force, isn't correct. And I think that it's a lot of big things, and I think that's what's going wrong in our schools. I think that it has to be a much more hyper-local kind of focus on we have schools that are being very, very successful. We have classrooms in schools that aren't so successful that are successful. And I think that kind of I think that this charge pulls us away from that hyper-local where the work needs to be done. I'm also reminded of, from the evaluation, the BEP we had this year, where there was you know, identifying that the problems we're facing, not that the implementation had been a failure, but the problems we have, we've reached a place where we have these complex problems where we are not doing well. And again, I'm not sure, you know, I will tell you that every time I've read an article about another school district that's doing miracles with restorative justice or this or that, you go look closer and they're doing no better and often much worse than us. You hear, and I don't think, not that we shouldn't be in communication with these districts, but I really think that we need to draw upon the experiences and understand what is going right and wrong in our schools in very deep ways. I don't see this charge doing that. And that's my biggest concern, and I don't have language to change the charge tonight because it's been a long week. It's been a long week. So that's, and kind of similar issues around the timeline as James, you know, but I think again, this is that this focus is that the first thing we're going to do is policy. I don't think changing policies is where our first focus should be, but we've got a policy draft by August, a complete policy by December, policy recommendations in January. So if I'm a member of this committee, or if I'm staffing this committee, first thing I'm going to do is go, what are we doing with policy? I don't think that's what this policy, I don't think that's where our problem is. So that's, and very regretfully, because I do understand the urgency, I would like to see this, I would like us to see us create this committee sometime in the month of July and not tonight. I don't have a date in July, but I think, you know, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we can sort through this and get the focus better and talk about whether we want to add people and things like that. I think we can do this by mid-July. I don't think 2 weeks is going to kill this committee. And I do think getting it right is important. So that's my...
Yeah, thanks, TJ. We are going to go ahead with the motion and the vote. TJ, I don't disagree with you on anything, but that's actually the committee. The timeline is something that the superintendent put out there. It's a draft. That was to give some ideas. It's going to be up to the committee. Dean, I welcome all the other, and I'm sure the people on the committee welcome the board members there. The more voices in there, the better that plan is going to be. And it's not only, we know it's not only about policy. In fact, we don't even know how much of the policy, but I believe it needs to be broad because we don't know exactly where the issues, we don't know exactly what the answers are, but we got to get working on it. So, do you have an amendment?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to amend the ability for teachers and students to be added to the committee, to the ad hoc committee as the chair sees fit. Or any other member sees fit. Can I change that? Chair or any other members?
Are these voting members?
Any voting members, yes.
No, I mean, are you talking about adding voting members?
Yes.
I'm not clear. I have to pull the policy on that one. I am not clear.
We just redid the policy on this one. The board president has the ability. We just went through it this afternoon. In fact, the board president.
Oh, I didn't go through it this afternoon.
I didn't either, sorry.
The board president has the ability.
Kate, could you speak into the microphone?
The board president has the ability to appoint members, and all 7 board members ratify or don't those members.
Okay, I was not aware of said policy.
Right.
I was not aware of it.
But that's not what you said, though.
No, that was the chair
That's what our
of the committee,
standing
not the
board policy is.
TJ?
I'd like to amend the motion to change the name of the committee from the Ad Hoc Committee on School Discipline to the Ad Hoc Committee on School Behavior.
Second.
Okay. Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
What did we just vote on? TJ's?
Changing the name.
The amendment, changing
Discipline
the
to
name
behavior.
to behavior.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So we're back to the main motion amended by a change in the name.
I have one more question, and this is for Matt. Our current classroom code of conduct references the BEP. And I heard discuss possible radical changes in the BEP. Amending the classroom code of conduct requires a special committee be created within certain parameters. And there's got to be a line there someplace, since classroom code of conduct referenced the BEP, that you can't just, you can't just change the BEP over and over again without, in effect, changing the classroom code of conduct. Maybe it's not even a question. I guess that as this committee goes forward, I think that an explicit discussion of the limits of what can be done without convening a classroom code of conduct committee needs to be on the table.
TJ, I did look at that. I did look at classroom code of conduct.
And it references the BEP.
And our team discussed it as we were asked to at least draft a charge statement for your consideration. The classroom code of conduct, we feel like the BEP leads, the classroom code of conduct follows. We would have to make revisions, potentially, to the classroom code of conduct. It is up not this coming year, but the year after in the policy cycle. So I think it would be up to the committee to consider. I would remind the board, though, that this committee is not necessarily making radical changes to the BEP. They may make minimal changes. It is their job to assess what changes need to be made, if any.
Okay, so Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 5-2. Okay, I move that Gloria Reyes chair the ad hoc committee and that James Howard and Kate Taves serve as the additional board members to the committee.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Passes 6-1.
I don't believe the committee. I can't agree with the people on it, sorry. It's not personal.
Don't have to explain your vote.
Okay, next item is notice of claim. Are you guys packing up?
We're trading. My budget fell apart, and so I
Okay.
figured I'd use it more than Dean, so we traded.
Okay, we are on notice of claim. You guys were close here. Let's just, hold on. I move to disallow a claim for damages and fees, said claim having been served upon the MMSD on or about April 7th, 2018 by RW and SB on behalf of themselves and SB, a minor, under Wisconsin statute Section 893.80, and said claim alleging liability based on acts/omissions by MMSD personnel.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, next action is with regards to our board meetings for the 2018-19 school year. So I move that the Board of Education approve the following Mondays for holding the regular board meetings at 6 p.m. over the 2018-19 school year. For 2018, July 30th, August 27th, September 24th, October 29th, November 26th, December 17th. And for 2019, January 28th, February 25th, March 18th, April 29th, May 20th, and June 24th.
Second.
Okay, Ahmad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, and this is with regards to our summer 2018 Board of Education meeting schedule. I move that the Board of Education approve the following dates for summer 2018 meetings. July 9th, Instruction Workgroup and Special Meeting. July 16th, Operations Workgroup and Special Meeting. July 30th, Special Meeting. August 13th, Special Meeting and Operations Workgroup. August 27th, Special Meeting.
Second.
Ahmad, your advisory vote?
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 7-0. We have no old or new business for this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Oh, Ahmad, your advisory vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.